All right, good morning, good morning. We have just a really, really special treat today. There's a passage in the book of Timothy where Paul, who's writing a letter to this young man, Timothy, he says, "To my true son in the faith." And that's how I feel about the man that's going to preach today. I don't know when it was, 2005, 6-ish. When we met. We've known each other for a long time. Jonathan showed up when I was a college director at another church, and he came the first night that I ever met him. He came and brought a bag full of clothes that he was giving away to a guy that he noticed wore the same outfit every week. And so he said, "I'm going to put some clothes together and give it to this guy." And I thought, that's interesting. And then he said, "Can we have lunch?" And I said, "Sure, we can have lunch." And we had lunch, and he said, "I want you to mentor me." And I said, "Are you sure about that?" And we've been having that conversation for 20 years. So anyway, this morning it is going to be a real treat for me to present to you a son, a brother, a friend, a family member. We celebrate the same wedding anniversary every year because that's how much he wants to be like me, that he asked to get married on the same day that I did. So anyway, Jonathan Madrid, everybody. Give it up for Jonathan. All right, have fun, buddy. By the way, during the song today, where we're singing, "I'm lifting both of my hands," I looked over at Jonathan, and he was really trying. He was really trying. So tell him what happened. Give it up for Jonathan one more time, everybody.
Movement, so good to be with you. Let me just start off by saying how much I love your pastor. 26 years I've known this man. And 26 years he's been giving me the grief that you've experienced for 2. But no, in all seriousness, him and Dana poured so much into me, and I wouldn't be where I'm at, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it weren't for him. It's just been a blessing to have a man who, out of the blue, had this young man come up to him and say, "Hey man, would you spend time with me even though you have kids and are married and you're doing full-time ministry and you're trying to songwrite?" And he said yes. It doesn't happen very often. And so, Movement, I want you to know that you are blessed to have Richie Fike as your pastor. He loves you. He prays for you. He's burdened by how he can serve and provide and disciple each of you. He is a pastor. So, very grateful for Richie Fike, for Dana Fike. In fact, it's Richie Fike who not only got me into ministry, but also kept me in ministry. He gave me my start, and after I got married, we kind of decided, my wife and I, that we were kind of ready to figure our lives out away from family and friends, and so we headed to Pittsburgh. And why Pittsburgh, I couldn't tell you other than Jesus, because I think the Lord has abandoned Pittsburgh. There's no sun there. And if you're from Pittsburgh, I'm so sorry. Let me pray for you afterwards. We were there for a few years, and that was a really bad experience, so bad that I felt like I'd never do ministry again. And so we moved to Nashville to be with my wife's family, and I tried my hand at the songwriting kind of career. And Fike, do you all call him Fike or Richie? Or Pastor Fike? What, Fike? Okay, I'm going to go with Fike because that's what I call him. Fike called me and said, "Hey man, what are you doing? You know where you belong. Come back." And he had just moved to Baton Rouge, and he called and said, "Come help me with this," and really was my gateway back into the church and where I now know I belong. And so it's because of Richie Fike that I'm here this morning. Well, I'm really excited to be wrapping up this series you've been in called Resident Aliens. About 5 years ago, my wife and I were kind of in a discerning stage of life. We were at a church in Maryland. We'd been there for almost 8 years. I was the worship pastor, and I was in my 40s, and I was just like, man, I think I'm ready to get off the stage. I'd like to see some young folk up here, and I don't know that I can keep cutting my hair so it doesn't look bald. I was just feeling like I was aging out, and I just didn't know what was next. And so my boss graciously sent my wife and I to a leadership intensive, which happened to be out here in Colorado. And the Cressmans, shout out to the Cressmans. The Cressmans here? Oh, right, there he is. The Cressmans graciously hosted us. And as you can imagine, having a host in a midlife crisis, that's a lot of fun. But they offered us the room, and we were there. And for about a week, we met with a bunch of different coaches. We had a family therapist, a ministry coach, a vocational coach, a discernment coach, all well-intended people whose words will wreck you and ruin your week. Okay, that's what we were in. And it was intense 8-hour days. We had no vacation at all. It wasn't restful at all. It felt more like Christian CrossFit where you're just trying to keep up with everybody. It was just exhausting. But the moment that changed my life happened in a conversation with our family therapist. At some point, she had asked about the stirring I was feeling, the frustrations. And so I just kind of went off and I started talking about everything I was dreaming about. The future of my family, the songs I wanted to write, the records I wanted to produce, the house projects, everything. And I was going on and on about vision and calling and purpose and using all the spiritual words I could use. And if I'm honest, I think underneath all of that was a frustration, and which was revealed that my wife Ashley wasn't dreaming with me. I felt kind of alone in that, which is kind of an amazing husband logic. It's like, hey, babe, I'm building a future. Can you applaud that? Great leadership. Don't do that if you're just married. Do not do that. So the therapist looks at Ashley and says, well, can you tell me about that? Why isn't that something you want to enter into and participate with your husband? And she said, and I'll never forget this because it just broke my heart. She said this. She said, I've never felt like it's been my turn to dream. And honestly, I feel like, Jonathan, you've been chasing all these things and you've abandoned me. Worst day of my life. Worst day of my life. Because in one sentence, God exposed something in me I had not wanted to see. I had drifted. I drifted away from my wife. I drifted away from my kids. And it wasn't anything dramatic. I didn't wake up one day and said, hey, I'm going to be an absent parent. I didn't decide I was going to emotionally neglect my family. There was no scandal. I didn't have an affair by the grace of God. There was just drift. I was distracted by all these things that I wanted to accomplish, and I got caught up in what I was trying to build, caught up in what I was trying to achieve. And again, to be transparent, as I processed through that, I think I got caught up in what I thought I would get from all those achievements, respect and attention and admiration and, over 10,000 followers on Instagram. And while I was chasing all of that, the people that were closest to me experienced less and less of my presence. And that moment woke me up. And by the grace of God, we started a deep season of heart work. And I can also say now, today, we just have a thriving marriage. It's beautiful. But that week it showed me something. And as I was thinking about this series, it reminded me of something I've never forgotten. That's that drift rarely announces itself. It usually happens while you're busy chasing something that feels important. Let me say that again. Drift rarely announces itself. It usually happens when you're busy chasing something else that you think is more important. See, most people, I find, don't drift from Jesus all at once. I think most people drift through frustration and disappointment when Jesus doesn't meet the expectation that a person has. Sometimes we can drift through distraction, like what I just told you about, when the noise of life gets so loud that the voice of God gets muted. Some of us drift through comfort and compromise when it feels like following Jesus starts to cost more than we're really willing to pay. And somewhere in that drift, we can still sound like followers of Jesus, like people who believe in the gospel while we're slowly losing our faith. And that's why I think Palm Sunday is such a great way to get into the end of this series. Because today we remember that we remember this Jesus who's riding into Jerusalem as a king with palms and praises and processions and the word Hosanna, Jesus save us. But Palm Sunday isn't just about the celebration. It's also about us as humanity being exposed. See, here's the truth. A lot of people can celebrate Jesus for a moment. But a select few can stay with him when he doesn't meet their expectations. And Palm Sunday proves that. Jesus rides into Jerusalem. We see branches being waved. We see voices rising. We hear Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And you know what it looks like? It looks like revival. It looks like the best party ever. It's a big moment. It's the kind of moment you want to be standing in the middle of. But it's not as deep as it looks. Because the people who were singing and rejoicing and celebrating Jesus, while they got Jesus right, they understood who he was, they were wrong about what he came to do. They wanted political freedom. They wanted Rome gone. They wanted the kingdom now, a visible, obvious, undeniable, powerful kingdom. And yeah, Jesus came to bring that kingdom, just not the one that they had in mind. Jesus came with a cross, not a sword. He came with suffering, not victory. He came with a kingdom not of this world. He came with a timeline that refused to move at the pace of the crowd's expectation and enthusiasm. And that's the part the crowd couldn't handle. Because Jesus did not come to be admired from a distance. He came to be followed all the way down into suffering and into death. I love the way that Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a pastor and theologian, puts it. He says, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. And Peter understands this better than anyone else. Why? Because Jesus himself had to hammer that very truth into him. Matthew tells us the story of how Jesus is having a conversation with his disciples before he goes into Jerusalem. He's telling them, hey, I'm about to be crucified. I have to suffer. I have to be mocked. And you know what? After all that, I will rise on the third day. But Peter couldn't take that. And here's his response. Read this. He says, Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Oh, Lord, this will never happen to you. Peter couldn't handle it. But Jesus, full of grace and love and mercy, knows exactly what Peter needs to hear. And he says this, get behind me, Satan. How would you like that? How would you like to be rebuked that way? Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me because you're not thinking about God's concerns. You're thinking about human concerns. See, Peter wanted glory without that cross in that moment. Peter wanted a Messiah, but without the suffering. Which means this warning, the series we've been going through, these letters, they weren't penned by a man who never misunderstood Jesus. No, he misunderstood Jesus a ton. We read it throughout the Gospels. It comes from a man who was lovingly corrected by Jesus. And so as we think about Palm Sunday, we have to remember that's a little haunting. See, the crowd could praise Jesus when he looked like the answer they were hoping for. But when Jesus kept walking his slow, cross-shaped, costly path, the crowds got thinner. And that's the warning that Palm Sunday carries every year. Not that people are hypocrites. Hey, no, that'd be far too simple, too easy. The warning's a lot harder. It's that initial enthusiasm is not the same as enduring faith. Let me say that again. Initial enthusiasm, that feeling of victory, of, oh, that was a great service, that can't touch enduring faith. You can mean it on a Sunday, and then by Friday, you feel a whole different way. Not because we're terrible people, but because the type of formation, the type of discipleship, the path that Jesus calls us to is slow. It takes time. It needs to marinate. It can't be done in a moment. It can't be done on a Sunday. It can't be done just by going to a nice Wednesday night or a Friday morning Bible study. It's got to be day in and day out. You know why? Because the world is discipling you Monday through Sunday. They've got a great plan. And believe it or not, you and I have enrolled ourselves in that plan unknowingly. And so we find Peter at the end of his life writing to a church that's living in this tension of the not yet, but right now, this promise that Jesus is coming back. And while they're sitting in this tension, the church isn't asking, is Jesus real? No, they believe Jesus is real, just like you and I believe that Jesus is real. They've settled that. The question they're actually trying to live with is a lot harder. It's, what do you do when Jesus is real, but the kingdom that he promised doesn't feel that way yet? How do you live in that? What do you do when you believe in this future of a new world where every tear will be wiped away? Well, all hurt will be gone. Where we're living the good life, but you're still experiencing and being shaped by the present. That's the tension of the now but not yet. See, the kingdom broke in when Jesus came, but the world has not yet been made new. The future arrived, but not fully, not yet. And Peter knows when people are living in that tension. He understands humanity so well. He says they drift. And again, that drift is usually not dramatic. We don't wake up one day and decide, hey, we're going to be done with Jesus. It's a little subtler than that. Sometimes it's a little less prayer. It's like, I'm good. Sometimes it's just skipping reading our Bibles, right? And those are just two basic things. If we do that every day, the growth you would experience is incredible. But as we drift, those things just become more of an option and less of a need. A little more scrolling on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook for all you 50-plus folk. A little more cynicism about whether any of this is actually true. And slowly, without any single decisive moment that you could point to, the future, the glorious future that Jesus tells us about, begins to become blurry. And when that future that we profess, that we sing about, when that future goes blurry, the soul becomes soft. When we lose sight of what's coming, we start living like this, our very present, is all there is. And friends, you and I were created for so much more. Once we start living as if the only thing that matters is here, we stop being transformed. We stop being renewed. And instead, we start looking like more and more of the world. Paul says it's being conformed. We start sounding like everybody else. We start thinking like everybody else. We start loving the things that the world loves. Our priorities change. Our expectations shrink. And I love the way that C.S. Lewis puts it. He says, aim at heaven and you will get earth thrown in. Aim at earth and you will get neither. That's Peter's warning. If you live only for what's in front of you, you lose even that. Man, talk about betting on the wrong racehorse. If you only live for what's in front of you, you lose even that. But if you live by the standards of the world that is coming, of the future that is promised to us, then Jesus gives us, he gives you and me the ability to live rightly in this one. But again, when that future goes blurry, that right living, that holiness that we sing about, that starts to feel optional. Truth starts to feel flexible. Discipleship gets incredibly shallow. Grace, it quietly gets redefined until it no longer has the power to transform you and me. And this is exactly where Peter speaks to us. I love his letters because they have the tone of a pastor, a man who genuinely cares. So as we read 2 Peter 3:10, here's what I want you to imagine. I want you to imagine Fike writing to you. I want you to imagine Fike speaking to you. This is Peter warning us as a man who knows what it means to be unsteady and then restored. And now he brings the church this question, a question that it's so imperative to know and understand and continue to examine ourselves with. If this future is really coming, what kind of people are we becoming now? And here's where we pick up in 2 Peter chapter 3. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. And on that day, the heavens will pass away with a loud noise. The elements will burn and be dissolved, and the earth and the works on it will be disclosed. Since all these things are to be dissolved in this way, it is clear what sort of people you should be in holy conduct and godliness, as you wait for the day of God and hasten its coming. Because of that day, the heavens will be dissolved with fire, and the elements will melt with heat. But based on his promise, we wait for new heavens and a new earth where righteousness dwells. Peter here is responding to a teaching that's circulating around that church in Asia Minor. The church had been waiting for Jesus to come back. They were waiting and expecting. And year after year after year, just disappointment. To the point where the church now starts asking, is this really going to happen? And then there are in these teachers who start saying, well, listen, I don't know that the world's going to end. Everything's just going to keep going. Nothing ultimate is coming. So maybe we need to rethink this holiness thing. See, the promise of Christ's return was now being treated as a problem instead of a promise. And these teachers were using the assumptions of the surrounding Greco-Roman philosophies and culture to make compromise begin to sound normal, and it begins to sneak into the church. What they offered sounded a lot like freedom. But what it really was a thinner, looser, less costly version of Christianity. Friends, if anybody ever tells you that following Jesus is easy, run the other way. Run the other way. That is a false gospel. And so as Peter begins to respond, he begins to attack that notion. He says, that theology right there that you are purporting is distorted. And when we begin to listen to that, lives get distorted. These teachers were offering a version of Christianity that asked almost nothing of people. It was spirituality without obedience. It was grace without any transformation. Do what you want. It's okay. It's covered by the blood. Freedom without self-control. I want to make something clear. The gospel is for everyone. It is inclusive in that way. It does not discriminate. But the gospel is exclusive in what it wants for us and what it calls us to. And these teachers were lying and bastardizing that gospel. And so Peter answers them with this thunderous word, but the day of the Lord will come. It's going to happen. Not might come, not could come, not if history eventually trends in the right direction. It will happen. And this present order, this life that you're living in, this life that you and I are living in is not ultimate. What feels like it's permanent is actually incredibly temporary. What feels like is normal is passing. What feels like is stable is dissolving. Listen, Peter's not trying to frighten anyone, and I'm not an end times guy, okay? I want to make that clear. I know it's coming off that way. It's the Pentecostal in me. I'll try to tone it back a little bit. Peter's not trying to frighten anyone, but he is trying to anchor the church. False teachers were saying, the present is all you've got, so settle in. Peter says, no, the present isn't final, so don't let it become your whole world. And then Peter makes a statement here. But really, if you look at the statement, it almost feels like a question that you and I have to wrestle with. He says this, since all these things are to be dissolved in this way, it is clear what sort of people you should be. Basically, if all of this is true, if the resurrection is true, if you believe the reason in the crucifixion, if you believe that the Holy Spirit was unleashed, then what kind of people should we be? This is the main thing that Peter wants us to wrestle with. Not, what's your end times chart? Did you get the date right? Nah. It's, what is your life becoming? It's not, have you mapped out the sequence of events correctly? We've all heard those people. Oh, wars and famines. Listen, we've been having wars and famines since, I can remember hearing Jimmy Swaggart preaching about Jesus coming back in 1989. These are things we've heard forever. Peter's not concerned with that. He's not concerned with end times. His bigger question is, are you being formed by the future that you claim to believe in? That's the bigger question. That's the deeper question. That's at the root of what he's saying. He wants us to really think, to be honest, and ask ourselves, do we have a future-proof faith? Do we have a future-proof life? Not just believing in the future that is coming, but becoming the kind of person who actually fits in that future. Because that future looks drastically different than the current culture that we live in. These teachers were offering a version of faith that asked almost nothing of people. It sounded incredibly spiritual. It sounded like there was a lot of freedom because there was a lot of boundary crossing. But all it did was produce people who were loose and shallow and ultimately unsteady. And Peter calls that out. To him, that's not maturity. That's drift, just packaged up with better vocabulary. Because, listen, real knowledge of Jesus. These teachers, they knew about Jesus. They knew enough about the gospel to communicate it. They also knew enough about philosophy. So they sounded really good. Imagine a really charismatic speaker. Those are these teachers. Paul points out, hey man, you know what? Knowledge in God is good. But it looks like it's puffing up in them. Because real knowledge in the gospel, real knowledge of Jesus produces something incredibly beautiful. It produces goodness and self-control, perseverance, love, holiness. In other words, the true gospel doesn't just inform us. It's not just about a bunch of information. It transforms us each and every single day. And that's the exact opposite of what these teachers were offering the church. To Peter, genuine faith meant genuine growth. And that's why for Peter, the bigger question is, what kind of person are you becoming in the now but not yet? Because for Peter, who we're becoming is always tied to where we belong. I am of Mexican heritage. I'm very proud of that. In my younger age, I tried really, really hard to put that on display. If you're anybody familiar with like 90s pop culture, right? Anybody familiar with the word cholo? Anybody? Yeah? Okay. Loose interpretation, it's like Mexican gangbanger, okay? It was like baggy dickies, whatnot. My whole LA family was all about that life, and I thought it was so cool because it was like, oh, I'm going to self-identify as a not white person because I look very pale, and I want people to know I'm Hispanic. I wanted people to know where I came from. My mom made fun of me and said, hey, if you really want to be Mexican, you really should wear an Aztec headdress and feathers on your crotch area. Like, it was ridiculous to them. But that's the type of pride. And this is what Peter's saying. It's hey, the way you act and the person you're becoming is a direct reflection of the place that you believe you belong in. All series long, Peter's been reminding us through his writings that we are strangers here. This is what you've been going through. We're exiles. We're temporary residents. We're aliens in a world that isn't quite home, which can feel incredibly hopeless. Like, how many of you have lived in a rental for more than 2 years? It's like you can't decorate, right? And if you put up a picture, then you're like, oh man, I'm going to have to fill that up when I leave this house. And you can't really do anything. It feels uncomfortable. It doesn't quite feel like home. And this is what Peter is telling us. This is how we ought to feel. But Peter doesn't end there because he wants to give us hope. He wants to paint reality, but he also wants us to know that in this not yet, in the now but not yet, there's peace. He says this, we wait for a new heavens and a new earth where righteousness dwells. Where it dwells. It doesn't visit. It doesn't occasionally show up. It dwells. It's home. And right now, I think we could all agree that righteousness feels a little homeless. And by righteousness, I want to unpack that just a little bit. I mean the kind of life that actually fits God's world. What's right, what's true, what's good, what's whole, what is aligned with the heart of God. This is righteousness. And if you've been trying to live that life, the life this series has described, the one where you're trying to stand out instead of fit in, where you're living holy, where you're fighting fire without fire, where you're becoming present before you're proclaiming anything, you know what I mean. It can feel costly. It's strange. You feel misunderstood. It feels like you're outnumbered. It feels like, man, it just doesn't quite fit. Well, good news. You're doing it the right way. You're doing it the right way. But Peter, understanding that tension, reminds us when he says that there is a world coming where righteousness won't feel strange. It will be at home. A world is coming where what is right will finally feel normal. And that changes everything about what it means for us to be resident aliens. Because it means we're not just people trying to avoid worldliness. No, it's good to go out into the world, to enjoy what the world has. I love Netflix. I love Prime. I love going to the movies. Anybody seen the new movie, Hail Mary? Loved it. So good, right? Right? We're not crazy that way. We're just not trying to look like that. But that's not the whole point. We're not trying to avoid worldliness. We're not people trying to be different for the sake of being different. We're not trying to be self-righteous. We're people learning to live now, right now, in this present age, by the values of the future that we're going to. And you and I, in this moment today, are meant to be a preview of that world. We are meant to display heaven on earth. So here's Peter's logic, and I want you to feel the weight of it. A world is coming where righteousness dwells. If that's true, then shouldn't we become truth tellers now, even if it costs us? And if a world is coming where peace isn't going to be fragile, should we maybe start becoming people of peace now instead of waiting till it's easy? If a world is coming where righteousness dwells, shouldn't we let righteousness start dwelling in us right now? Everything good and beautiful. If a world is coming where Jesus will be all in all, should we stop treating him like an accessory, something that we just add on to a life that we've already designed? This is Peter's logic. A world is coming where holiness will not feel strange, so we need to stop living like holiness is optional. We need to be now what we will be at home then. That's the final call of this series. That's what it means to be a resident alien. These are Peter's last words to a people who are tired and tempted and drifting. He's not saying try harder. Confusing, right? He's not saying try harder. He's not saying be more religious. He's not even saying get your theology right. What he is saying is become, right now, the kind of people who are going to carry the presence of God, the type of people who carry heaven with them in a world that doesn't understand it. And this, right here, when you and I begin to do this, is where Jesus becomes beautiful to the world. Because what Palm Sunday shows us is that Jesus would not become the king the crowd wanted. Jesus loved them way too much for that. The crowd wanted immediate relief. But Jesus came to do a deeper work, a deeper rescue. The crowd wanted Rome removed. They wanted freedom. But Jesus came to give a different type of freedom. He came to deal with sin and death and judgment and the human heart. They wanted a king who would take power. He was the king that would give his power and himself away. Peter says it this way: for you were called to this because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. He did not commit sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth. And when he was insulted, he did nothing to insult in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but he entrusted himself to the one who judges justly. He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, so that having died to sin, we might live for righteousness. Jesus decided to ride to Jerusalem first, not to Rome. Jesus decided to carry a cross, not a sword. He walked towards rejection and suffering and death. And then he rose from the grave. And when he rose, he did more than prove he was alive, because that's not enough. When he rose, he broke the future into our very present. And that is the gospel. That's why the resurrection matters so much here. Jesus didn't just survive death, he conquered it. He didn't just prove a point. He didn't just give us hope that something better might happen one day. N.T. Wright says this, he says, the resurrection is the sign, among many other things, that God's new creation has begun. That the future has come bursting into the present. And that means the future Peter talks about isn't imaginary. It's not a distant fantasy. It has already broken into history through the risen Christ. So when Peter calls us to holy conduct and godliness, he's not asking us to pretend like the future is real. He's telling us to live from a future that's already begun by the work that Jesus did on the cross. So in no way can this ever be moralism. It's not about doing the good thing. It's about following his example. We're not trying to become future-shaped people so that Jesus will love us. No, he already proved that. We are becoming future-shaped people because in Jesus, God's future has already broken into the present. So we have no choice. If we believe in this future, if we believe in the power of the resurrection, then we can't help but live this way. That's why grace can actually change us. That's why holiness is possible. That's why the now but not yet isn't just a frustrating gap. It's a holy ground where the Spirit forms us, you and me, into the people who belong to God's coming world. This is the incubator. This is where you and I are being refined. And this is why I think Peter's such a powerful guide for us here. Because again, he's not writing as a man who always got it right. In fact, he got it wrong a lot. That's why I love Peter. He's my favorite disciple and apostle. Put his foot in his mouth a ton. I can relate to that. Liked to run and didn't know where he was going at times. Incredible faith. Gets out of the boat, walks on water, walks towards Jesus and forgets what he's doing, takes his eyes off of Jesus, drifts. What does he do? He drowns. Just, like I relate to that. Peter's writing to us as a man who knows what it is to break down, to fail publicly, and to be put back together by grace. That's beautiful. It's written by a man that Jesus put back together. And I need that. I need that reminder every day. Why? Because I know what it's like to say what I believe and then still live like whatever's right in front of me is what matters the most. I know what it's like to talk about the urgency of the kingdom and then grab my phone and just scroll through TikTok to kill time because I just want to numb out. I know what it's like to say I want to grow and then keep choosing what's so much easier. Sitting on the couch, streaming my favorite shows, watching the 100th episode of The Office. I know what it's like to preach hope on a Sunday and then spend Tuesday stressed out, impatient, and acting like everything depends on me. I think there are a few of you like that in this room. You feel like you have to have it all together. But can I tell you that the authors, those who God inspired, those who he worked through, were so flawed. And they dealt with the same things you and I deal with. I think all of us can relate to that Palm Sunday crowd because we all want that Palm Sunday Jesus. We want that visible breakthrough. Like we want to feel it. We want power. We want the obvious moment. We want that beautiful Sunday morning where the Holy Spirit breaks out. And if you're in a Pentecostal church, people are running around. But if you're not, then, the Baptists are finally raising their hands. That type of moment, where the King is obvious. But when we don't see that, I think we can all relate to the restlessness the church felt. Because it's so frustrating when Jesus doesn't move as fast as we want him to, or as clearly as we want him to, or in the way that we want him to. And maybe this morning you're here, and you haven't stopped believing in Jesus. But maybe you're just a little tired because you're not seeing what you thought you would see. You still believe in the right things, but maybe they don't feel as real as they used to. You're not walking away, but maybe you're just not as awake as you used to be. His presence doesn't feel as palpable and as tangible as it once did. And all of that's not happening because you hate God. Maybe it's because you got distracted, just like I did in my marriage. You filled your life with nothing bad. Nothing that I was wanting to pursue was inherently evil. But it took away from the priority of my marriage and my children. Let me tell you, distraction is really, really easy to fall into. One of the biggest culprits, and you're going to hate this, Fikey, church. We think church is enough, so we come to Sunday and we come to serve and we do Bible study and we think, hey, we did it. We're good. We're going to save our time with the Lord for those moments. And then we fill our schedules with everything else going on. And distraction eventually makes us tired, tempted, distracted people. And Peter writes to these exact people in the church and he says, remember. Remember who you are. You're a resident alien. You don't belong in this world. The things that are distracting you, they're not for you. I have something so much better, so much more beautiful, so much more life-giving. Remember what's coming. Listen, I know today feels hard. I know today maybe might feel mundane, but there's a day coming where joy will fill the atmosphere. It's a joy that will be undeniable, a joy that can't be quelched. And he says, remember, just because that day hasn't come like you thought it would, it's slow. Slow doesn't mean forgotten. God has not forgotten his promises. Remember that. You are seen. He hears you. He says, remember that righteousness isn't losing. Remember that the world that you're living in cannot compare to the realness of the world that is coming. And remember this, that the clearest sign of what you believe in is how you live before it arrives. The clearest sign of what you believe in is how you live before it arrives. So here's what I want to give to you to take out of this room, okay? For the next 7 days, and you could do it longer, but I feel like 7 is incredibly manageable, okay? For the next 7 days, before you make any meaningful decision, before you choose how to spend your evening, before you respond to a conversation, before you think about how to use your body, before you think about how to speak to a particular person you need to speak to, ask yourself this question. Is this future-proof? Does this attitude that I have belong in the kingdom that's coming? Does this habit that I've formed now belong in the kingdom that's coming? Does this resentment that I feel right now belong in the kingdom that's coming? Does this use of my time, does this version of my freedom belong there in the kingdom that's coming? This week, don't just think about the future God promised. Practice living in it. This is the opportunity that you and I have. This is how we become more and more like Jesus. This is how we become transformed. So before you grab your phone, maybe pause and pray. It's like a 2-minute thing. God, I'm going to grab this, and I'd really like to watch some TikTok. Is that okay? He might say, cool. You might not hear anything. Or you might sense like you need to do something else. Before you choose what's easy, maybe ask yourself, is this easy thing forming me in the right way or the wrong way? And I would venture to say that most of the time, it's not good. Before you compromise, because all of us do that, we compromise on certain things, ask, hey, what belongs in this world that's coming? Does that still fit over there? Maybe for you, this week, you need to pick one place where drift has started. Maybe you're like me. Maybe it was your marriage. Maybe you need to reinstate date night. Maybe it's hanging out with your kid. Maybe for those of you in a relationship, in the now, you're dating. In the not yet, you're thinking about marriage. Maybe you need to think about those boundaries again. Pick a place where you've drifted and invite Jesus to meet you there. Confess that, because he's faithful. He's faithful to me. He's not looking to condemn. He's looking to give you real freedom. And just so we're clear, this is not a call to earn anything from God. Like we just sang, there is nothing we could do to earn God's love, grace, mercy, favor, nothing. Even though I don't deserve it, you give it. That's the God we love. This is not a try harder so God will love you sermon. I love the way that Dallas Willard says this. She says, grace is not opposed to effort. It is opposed to earning. Paul would tell us to work out our salvation. So when Peter says, be on guard, and when he says grow in grace, he's not calling you to perform. He's calling you to cooperate with the grace that's already at work in you because of what Jesus did on the cross. This is not about earning a future. It's about learning to live from it. That's how you and I, as the church, resist drift. That's how we stay faithful. That's how we stay anchored as we live in the tension of not yet, but not, the now, but not yet. That's how we practice living in the future. And here's why it matters so much. If you don't live from the future that Jesus promised, if you and I fail at this, and what I mean by fail, I don't mean make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes, okay? But if you and I don't make the conscious choice to walk this path, we will live from the present that this culture hands us. And friends, this world, this culture, it's not trying to make us holy. It's doing the opposite. It's not wanting to make us thrive. It's wanting to bring us into bondage. It's trying to make you comfortable. It's trying to make you distracted. It's trying to make you reactive. It's making you spiritually soft. And Jesus didn't save us for that reason. He didn't save us to survive this world. He saved us so that we could begin to prepare for the one that's coming. The one where righteousness dwells, where what is true and good and whole will finally feel at home. And that means that our habits, they're not random. Our compromises aren't neutral. We are becoming someone. Every day, you and I are being shaped. The only question is by what? What's forming us? Is it what's fading, the present? Or is it what's coming? That's the warning of Palm Sunday. That enthusiasm is not the same as enduring faith. This is the warning that Peter is giving us in his letters. The future loses its grip on us, and drift won't be far behind. If the future loses its grip on us, drift won't be far behind. But Jesus, crucified, risen, and reigning, has already brought the future into the present. So friends, don't let this age, today, the present, tell you what's normal. Don't let the delay of the future turn into drift. Don't settle for Palm Sunday praise without the Good Friday surrender and the resurrection hope. Be now what we will be at home then. That's the life worth living. That's the life this series has been pointing us towards. Our prayer is that Jesus, in the now, but not yet, would make us now the kind of people who belong in the world to come. Amen? Let's pray.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. We want to know, what is your next step? What's the Lord leading you to do next? Would you email us at info@movementchurch.co so we can join you in that next step? We'd love to help you move forward in your relationship with God. By the way, here at TMC, we have a little army of prayer warriors who absolutely love to pray with and for people no matter what they're walking through. You can text a prayer request to this number, 719-800-7729, and our prayer team will pray with you until something changes. If you'd like to contribute financially to the Movement Church, and we'd be so grateful if you would, the easiest way to do it is to text the amount you'd like to give to this phone number, 833-725-0132. You can also find a link on our website, movementchurch.co. Listen, if you live around the Tri-Lakes area, we'd love it if you joined us live for one of our worship services at Bear Creek Elementary in Monument, Colorado at 10 a.m. We will save a seat for you. If there's one thing we want you to know, it's that God is for you, and so are we.